Hi, Sterling Allen here at TeslaTech 2013. It is July 27th, 2013, and we're going to be talking to Mr. Gregg, who just gave a presentation. We had an interview earlier, and I forgot to turn the camera on. I thought it was turning on, and I didn't. So we've got part two, and this is just redoing part one. I really appreciate him retaking this. So that's why it was light in part two and dark in part one. So here we go.
Hey Sterling.
Nolan is your first name, right?
Rolland.
Rolland.
Yeah, like the country Holland with an R.
Okay.
So I appreciate you doing this little interview. I think previously I just talked a little bit about how and why I got into this.
Yeah.
And so I'll just kind of go over that. Basically, my background is in corporate marketing. It's actually called search engine marketing, search engine optimization. This is in building websites, optimizing online websites, and I've done corporate marketing for General Motors and all this kind of stuff, national, brand, and direct. And so that's where I've been. But I wanted to really utilize my skills for a better good, because I knew that there's a lot of technologies out there that maybe weren't getting the attention they needed. And so I decided 5 years ago to go on a quest. And that quest is starting Native Clean Energy, which is a nonprofit. It also has a for-profit side, but most of it has been nonprofit because we're still putting money into it. Our slogan and describes our mission and our reason for being, which is empowering communities with affordable and sustainable energy, food, water, healing, and shelter. So we actually have joint ventures or teaming agreements and have spent money developing different types of products and technologies in each of those fields: in food production, water purification, water production, water harvesting, energy production, energy harvesting, and healing products. And that's healthyhumanperformance.com. It's all about the detoxing your immune and boosting your immune system and eating superfoods. And then shelters, building sustainable shelters and what that consists of. But this really what here is we've been focusing on lately, because it actually has applications in a few of those areas. Of course, energy is the easiest one to see. It's copper wire wound in a toroid. And this is the fundamental flow and shape of basically every material on Earth: air, water, molecules, atoms, electrons, electromagnetic energy. They flow in this particular shape. You'll notice that our Milky Way galaxy, if you take a picture of it looking at it, it looks like this. If you look at it from that angle, it looks like the inside of that, all coalescing into the middle. Our planets, they spin in this particular shape, and even the water vortexes, if you watch it, read Victor Schauberger's work. It's all about the vortex. And so we decided to, actually I didn't invent this. I just came upon this earlier stage of development. Daniel and Erica NUNEZ invented this by inspiration from many prior scholars before them, including Marco Rodin and Randy Powell, Victor Schauberger, and others along there. I met them about 1.5 years ago and was really impressed with what they had done to that stage, and I've helped them, as well as others, get to this stage. So Native Clean Energy has a joint venture with One Stop Energies to take this into applications for lighting, which is what I may have explained briefly already, but lighting, healing applications, even increasing the growth of plants. And so there's all sorts of applications that this can go in, and we're closest with the lighting. That's the one where we've done the most work with, where we think that we have a better product than what's on the market right now for LED lighting. And so that's what we're looking to finalize and package up. We've got relationships with UL Labs in a specific UL certified lab in Nevada that's willing to go through the steps with us to getting it certified. So it's safe, and the claims are based on reality, and they're backed up and reproduced, and it's stamped with their stamp. And so we're going through that process right now. So that's, I think, probably about where we left off.
One of the things that you talked about in that first session that we did, you talked about some of the data that you had accumulated, the 2 tests that you had done. Do you want to repeat that?
Sure, yeah. There's the interesting test that was done to compare how a normal lighting system would function versus this. So we had 576 LEDs, which took 28 watts to light up traditionally from a 12-volt battery. And that 12-volt battery with those 28 watts lighting the 576 LEDs basically lasted 1.5 hours. And then we put the coil on it, and it lasted 58 hours. and it only took 1 watt. And so obviously it was using more watts to actually light it up, but it was only pulling out 1 watt from the battery. So that's a pretty amazing thing for off-grid lighting, developing countries, even us. I mean, if you were able to, go 2.5 days without recharging your battery, and it was providing your whole entire room light, that's a pretty significant. This is just a small little battery, that 7 amp hour battery, and so this is a very efficient in doing that. So there's a bunch of other videos that show lighting explanations in different ways that we've shown, with amp meters, voltmeters, and analog power meters going in, and then the same thing on the output, and then an oscilloscope showing the wavelengths so we can see the actual, there's the same number of actual peaks and same number of waves on the input and output, but the amplitude is much larger on the output wavelength. So people who are more technical can analyze those pictures and see the phase angles of the voltage and the amperage, so they can see it is real power. It is a resonant circuit, so the load does have to be in resonance with the actual coil and the amplification. So it's a resonant circuit, and there's a resonance there. When we hit a certain frequency, it zings, and all the voltage comes out. It's like a bell rings, So those are some of the data points with the LEDs that we've gotten. So.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I know you're tired. It's been a long day. You've given a presentation, been talking to Marco Roden. He's given a presentation.
It was great listening to Marco. Yeah.
And you've had a lot of people asking you questions, so I
Yeah.
appreciate you hanging in there. And now you've got more chats going on yet. So
Yeah.
all right.
Thanks
Thank you.
for talking about the lighting applications and what is the products that are closest to market with the Vortex coil. And so we've tested the Vortex coil in lighting and growing situations, and just the mere fact that we can light up LEDs, red lights and green lights, red and blue lights, the 440 and the 660 nanometer wavelengths, which are used for the vegetation and the flowering parts of growing vegetables, herbs, and fruits. We've seen that, we can light up the lights much cheaper than any other possible grow light on the market. In fact, I've used the most efficient LED grow light on the market from ProSource Worldwide, and that's the UFO illuminator. We did it for many years, and we were able to power that light up much cheaper than usually it takes. And I've got that video as well on the YouTube channel. Usually it takes about 177 watts to light up, and we were able to light it up for 40 watts. And you can see that video as well. And that was when I actually, the first test I did was that particular test, when I met Daniel NUNEZ and started to, I got a coil from him. He lives in the Bronx in New York, and he walked me through how to hook it up. And because I wasn't going to market something or help something out unless I know that there's something real there, put my time and my energy and my money into it. So this is something that over the course of me being a marketing background, I've actually had to get a little bit in the technical aspects of it, just for my own due diligence and my own conscience, to be understanding what it is that we're helping and if we're doing something correct, or if we're marketing a charlatan, which is not something I want to do. I don't have time for that. I want real solutions with real applications right now. And so that's where we focused. And so the slogan of Native Clean Energy is empowering communities with affordable and sustainable energy, food, water, healing, and shelter. And so energy is just one area that we focused in. We've got relationships with inventors who are on the cutting edge of all 5 of those different areas, which are on the bottom level of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, are those fundamental things that human needs before we can actually become creative and conscious and start to think about things that are more consciousness enhancing, artist things, and Renaissance type ideas, poetry and other things, and even more innovative ideas. If you can't eat, can't be warm with shelter, you don't have the right health care, you don't have the healthy water, or have energy to support all that, then you're not going to be able to have a society that's innovative and evolving at the pace that it should. So that's the whole premise of what we've been up to. And the Vortex coil, it actually plays into a few of those. It has energy applications, it has health applications with pulsed electromagnetic field therapy, it has water structuring applications. Basically, I've studied a lot about structuring water, and we've actually partnered with the gentleman who structures water in Oregon, and we have a little market in Seattle where we deliver structured water in 5-gallon bottles. We've done a lot of tests with that water, and again, it also has amazing effects on horticulture and people and hydration, because when you structure water, it gets down to 5 to 25 molecules in a hexagon shape, and it actually is able to be accepted into aquaporin channels in your cell, so you get a better hydration instead of just peeing it out. It's able to take in things in and out of the cell walls much better. Well, how is water structured? Well, we have to copy nature. Again, nature has all the answers. And so when you have nature, what happens to water? In the hydraulic cycle, there's pressure, there's evaporation, there's vortexing, there's running over rocks, collecting minerals, there's magnetism that comes when the water goes down and it comes back up through pressure. So there's all these different things, and a lot of parts of that is the vortexing aspect, because that's how things flow. So this sends off a vortexing electromagnetic field. Running pipe through this will actually break down these large clusters of water into smaller clusters. So this also has aspects in structuring water. We need to do a lot more testing to really fully flush out that claim, but we know that that's a part of it that can be used in the future. Shelter, well, it doesn't really have any, we can't really live in it, but it can help us out with our housing by providing us a little bit better efficiency, or quite a bit better efficiency with powering our homes. Lighting and
heating, air conditioning.
Heating, air conditioning, other big loads. We need to, one of the things that I'll mention is that lighting is what we can hook up directly to this right now without any more circuitry being built. Okay, everything in this room is built at 60 hertz. All the appliances that plug into the wall have the impedance built into their circuits to match 60 hertz. That's what they accept. This actually resonates at a certain frequency based on the amplifier and the actual physical winding. Each one we're building by hand right now, so some of them are a little different. If we had a machine doing it, we'd have a resonance that would be the same every time. But this resonates up in the thousands of hertz, much higher than 60 hertz. So some appliances don't take that power particularly well, so we need to develop circuitry to step that high frequency power back down to a usable impedance for these different types of appliances.
Let's jump with that really quick to the first question that I asked you out there, which is how soon could we see something like this available on a practical level, and what would it take to get to that point?
Well, the coil doesn't need any more development. In an application for lighting, let's say we wanted to replace all the lights in here. Well, we simply would need a LED manufacturing company to partner with, per se, and we would be able to hook up the coil. We'd show them what frequencies resonate the coil at and how that, and we need to get it UL certified, so we would be able to...
How long would that take?
Well, fortunately enough, I was just in Vegas, and we've got a lab there that's very excited, the operations manager and the owner of this lab, and they said that it would take probably a few months to go through all of their testing for the stamp, but that we...
And this person you talked to is with UL?
They're a UL certified lab.
Okay.
Yeah, and so they can stamp the UL stamp.
Okay.
So so that we can sell it before that. There's no problem. It's just that that's a higher level of credibility for your claims and your product.
Right.
So,
and what kind of money do you need to get to that point?
$25,000 to get the UL stamp. Now, there's more money needed to actually build the box for the LED lights and integrate this into it. We don't know.
What kind of testing would be required before you get the UL stamp?
They need to test a lot of safety about the field that comes off of this. Is it going to hurt anything? You know, is it reliable? Is it anything going to break down? Is it going to melt? You know, what kind of voltage regulators are on it to keep it from surging? And
can you extrapolate a lot of that information from known parameters?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, all that is really just basic electronics certification. None of it is any more R&D that we need to see. We've already shown that we can light up LEDs at a much cheaper way. So that's already in the bag. It's now packaging it up and going through the traditional commercialization channels. So.
Don't you, when you go to UL approval, you have to have the final product that they test, correct?
Not necessarily. With this lab, what we talked to them about is that they can give us the parameters that we need to change, and then we can change those, and they'll work with us through that process.
That's nice.
Yeah, these guys are really great in Vegas that I've worked with.
To use an analogy, it'd be like you have to take your car into the emissions inspection place.
Yeah.
And so the people who make the emission rules, you know, the government or whatever, that's one thing. That's like the UL mother
Yep.
But the people who actually do the inspections,
Right.
that's who you're talking to.
Absolutely, absolutely, exactly. So,
All right.
Yeah, so the lighting is right now, also was right now is a pulsed electromagnetic field therapy. We're in the process of designing a circuitry right now that allows it to resonate from 1 to 25 hertz, which has been shown to have a lot of healing benefits. There's a gal that spoke about that doctor here, and they've got many, many positive results. The amazing thing about this is this doesn't cost $5,000, $6,000, which a lot of these PEMF devices do. To make this, I mean, it doesn't cost that much. It's just the copper wire, the labor, the frame.
What are we talking about, the price-wise, and what kind of sizes would we be talking about? Let's say what I envision, it would be a self-looped lighting system that you would put in without any wires going to it.
That particularly needs some R&D because we need to actually separate the extra power off into a capacitor bank, store it enough, and have a primary battery and a charging battery and a switching circuit to actually switch that primary back to the secondary.
That sounds like an afternoon work for somebody who's equipped.
If somebody who's equipped, we would love to work with them. It's beyond me, you know, it's beyond Daniel. But if we had some really smart electrical engineers who understood how, you know, really how capacitors works and the flow of energy and could siphon that off and how switching circuits worked, and really understood high pulsed transistors, then we could really accomplish some amazing stuff.
My understanding of self-loop system, and Vernon Roth corroborates this, is you need to go from the primary to a secondary system, separate system, then come back. You can't go from itself into itself.
Right. Yeah, exactly, because you got a circuit, and basically this is a resonant circuit, what's creating this power, and so we need to siphon it off into this dam over here, per se, being the batteries or the capacitors, or a set of capacitors, some fast, some slower discharging, and then back over to the charging battery, or have two batteries and just switch it back and forth. So
give us a visual. Let's say that we wanted to create a light fixture that would be a complete package that would power itself, would have LEDs. How big would it be, and how much would it cost?
Well, I can't go the power itself route because I just don't know how much R&D that would take. So that would be amortized into the cost whenever the product was actually, you know, finished. So, I mean, if I was to guess, the components, if we figured out the components, there's nothing that is that, you know, exotic per se. The coil's already built. You know, a coil that's this big, right now we're already selling these coils fully built for $500 to $600. People can buy them right now on onestop-energies.com, and soon I'll have them on nativecleanenergy.com as well. But then we'll have the LEDs, and then you have some circuitry, and so I imagine a few $1,000. It shouldn't be more than that after we've figured out exactly what those components are. You know, it shouldn't be more than that. But you know, that's for the future. Right now, I know that. See, we've also got a very interesting potential to work with crystal batteries. I'm actually working with Marcus Reed and vacuumenergy.com and Charles Frazier, and they have this crystal battery that actually recharges itself. And what we're hoping to do is combine, and we've already sent him a coil, he's got a coil, and we're hoping to actually take this battery that recharges itself, put them in series to get a certain number of voltage, which will, again, always recharge itself, and then utilize our circuitry and the Vortex coil to amplify that energy up and utilize it in systems. And so that itself is actually, with today technology, can be done. Today technology, we can have what you're talking about right now with just that battery system. So we don't have to self-loop it because we have that battery system and we can just amplify that energy. Of course, self-looping it is the goal. So we would hope to, in the future, have the funds to explore that particular avenue, because that would be, we know that there's something happening with, when the vortex is happening, there's a shearing happening. We know that there's massive amounts of voltage. Even when we're only putting in 20 volts, we're getting out, you know, we've gotten out over 1,000 volts. And we're making tons of ozone just with 20 volts and an amp. And usually to make ozone, you need high voltage to be able to separate the O2 molecules and have one of those oxygen molecules connect with another and make O3, which is ozone. You know, there's many good things that ozone can do. It's antibacterial, it helps odors and viruses and all that kind of stuff.
Can also be detrimental.
And it can also be in a highly concentrated form. So when I've had that happening in my shop, when we resonated at the high frequency, we get this high resonant voltage, we've realized that we can put it in a fluid and it won't make ozone. So that's one of the things that we may need to do, is when we actually get that resonant frequency and have it pumping out that voltage, we may need to basically cover the whole entire Vortex coil in some kind of epoxy so it won't actually touch the oxygen. So that's part of the R&D of finishing it with the UL lab and getting it certified. So.
Right. And I imagine they'll be looking at the magnetic fields.
Absolutely.
What kind of ramifications do you have for everything nowadays is electronic, your cell phones, your appliances, and if you've got this thing and your TVs, is it going to be affecting those? Is it going to be interfering? Is it going to be...
Very good question. And, I've wondered the same, and I've been testing it for about 1.5 years now. All different types of gauges in all different types of places in my own house, and I've got all your traditional electronics in my house, including this cell phone, which has never had any problems. What's interesting about the field is, I do a lot of meditation and self-relaxation techniques. I'm a biofeedback practitioner, so I understand the physiology of the human body and the anatomy very well, and how we interact with the systems around us. And I'm also sensitive to electronics and frequencies like these lights, which are fluorescent, which are not too fun to me. And so what I've noticed with this coil and the frequency that comes off of it is I feel energized. I feel good around the coil. When I've got it on testing for hours, I feel really good. I don't feel hungry at all. I don't even feel hungry at all. And this is just anecdotal evidence of me being around it. But I've not seen any issues with any other types of electronics where it's actually affected it negatively. It does have a really big field. It has a really big field that comes off of it. The field, when it's resonating at, say, when we're putting out a field, like I was testing Wednesday here, and we had just tested it, I think with you, actually, on the radio show, and we were putting in, I think, 2.5 amps at around 20 volts, and we got out around 370 volts at 2.5 amps out, and we had a field of about 25 feet we could measure with the Gauss meter, and so it was a big field, but we haven't noticed it actually affecting negatively anything around it. Now, what may affect is an electrical field. Like Tesla coils have a large electrical field that they emit, not exactly magnetic, which is different from this, and so that may be more negative on different appliances. So I don't really know. That's more testing to really put electrical systems in the field for maybe a week at a time and see if there's any degradation.
Well, what happens when you have multiple units inside of your facility, so that you've got maybe a bank of lights, for example? Are they going to interfere with each other?
Interestingly enough, we can engineer them to interact with each other. We've taken coils, so we'll put energy into one coil, we'll put a different coil on top and a different coil on bottom, pull the energy off that's basically residual magnetic field inductance, and we'll be able to take more energy off. So we've not found that they interact with each other negatively, but we've been able to engineer them to interact with each other positively, to take more energy off instead of just wasting it as a magnetic flux is going off.
So like in a synergistic way.
Right, yeah. Exactly.
Now, what about, going back to price point, when you talked about in the region of thousands of dollars, and we were talking about a light. Now, you weren't saying that the light fixture would cost $1,000 or
Once we get it into a manufacturing facility, I imagine it wouldn't cost more than a few hundred, $500, $600 maybe like a TV. But it just depends on our relationship with a good manufacturer that is able to manufacture it at a nice cost, and what kind of components we end up putting in it. I don't imagine the components would be that costly because they're already known components.
Basically, you're talking a light that never has to be plugged in, that can be forever on, so to speak.
Yep. And we can do that now with without any other R&D with the crystal batteries that are existing right now. So that's today technology that is available today. With mass production of that, we can get it down. Right now, you can buy our coil for $600. You could buy the crystal batteries for 2,500 EU, 3,300 USD, and you could create the circuitry, and you could basically have a perpetual light right now today.
So now you're a marketing guy, and you know what you just said.
I did.
And the price point you just gave for
Huge.
yeah.
It's way
How are you going to sell that?
Well, right now it's you know, that's, I just said that's what, about $4,500 or so. $4,000 is what that perpetual light would be. That's because we're building them by hand.
Yeah.
And we're building the coils by hand in New York. We're building the crystal batteries by hand in Germany. And so if we were able to get that into a, you know, manufacturing process, we could bring that down to, you know, thousands of dollars down to a reasonable price that would be able to, you know, be affordable by people, and they would never have to turn on a light again and have that affect their meter, you know, at least at this point. And then we could, in the future, engineer heating, engineer cooling, and whatnot.
And maybe there are better applications than lighting that this thing will be well suited for.
Quite possibly. Quite possibly.
Yeah. People will come out of the woodwork and say, hey, I know just the thing that would be perfect for it.
And we hope for that. That's why we're in the process of copywriting it to protect the intellectual property so that we can help steer it in the open source direction and able to, you know, we want to profit off this so we can all make a living as well. But we've open sourced it to this point so we could hopefully truly get the development capital of the crowd, of everybody, because there's intelligence that we don't have that somebody else may have, and so we want to help that person work with us by sharing what we know and then taking advantage of that, integrating it into a product, helping them become part of the team. Whoever wants to play, we can work with them. So absolutely, we want to take advantage of people who are out there in their garages working just like we have been. So.
Really quick, we can come back to this if you want, but for a little bit, could we talk about some of the other projects that you're involved in? We started going there, and then we kind of came back to this. Now let's go back to that subject of the other projects you're involved with.
Sure, yeah. So Native Clean Energy, I started that. I'm actually from a town called Yakutat. It's a small southeastern Alaskan town. I'm part of the Yakutat Tlingit tribe. I look very Caucasian, but my mom's Indian and my dad's Irish-Scottish, and so I grew up in southeast Alaska in a place which is very remote, and it's still developing, believe it or not. Even though it's part of the United States, it's very rudimentary technologies. I mean, cell phone service just got there this spring, and so it's the first time anybody's had cell phones there. So my inspiration for starting Native Clean Energy was really truly growing up in a place that didn't have much for our traditional amenities. Now that was a blessing and also a curse in the same tune, because I got to grow up in a place that was very serene, you know, it was really untouched and all that, so I really respect nature.
But if I could comment on the name Native, it has two meanings here. Number one is like Native American, which is your upbringing, and the whole consciousness that represents, that a lot of people who are enlightened can relate to.
Absolutely.
And number two is the idea of nature and getting back to nature and mimicking nature.
You got it. You nailed it, Sterling. And this is I'm actually the raven is actually the part of my totem. And this is carved by my uncle Bemis, Fred Bemis. His Tlingit name is Kachatin. And so this is actually part of the graphic on nativecleanenergy.com. And there's a story behind that graphic that is personal. It's actually, my Uncle Gus died fishing, and he's on the tail of the raven that you can see. And it shows the raven scooping up the coho and scooping up the frog and then scooping up, and then my Uncle Gus on the tail. And so each carving has a story. This is just a hairpiece that my uncle carves and sells in Yakutat for the tourists that come up there. But you're absolutely right. I've grown up with respecting Mother Nature and always working with her. And so I think that a lot of the technologies that we're seeing these days are working more closely in a symbiotic fashion, or a lot of the technologies that are at places like this that are emerging technology are understanding that if we work with biomimicry and copy nature's processes, we will have a lot more harmony and we'll be able to harness energies that are all around us. And so you're absolutely right with growing up with, of course, Native American values, but then the actual technologies having those applications. So going back to what other projects is Native Clean Energy interested in, involved in, so food is one of the interesting things. I've researched the most efficient ways of providing healthy food and what that looks like. And so, of course, right now, most food drives 500 to 1,000 miles before it gets to you, and there's a lot of diesel involved in that. There's a lot of pesticides and herbicides to get that there. There's a lot of work to get that lettuce on your table.
What's the average transit distance.
About 600 miles.
Per item on the table,
yeah,
right?
per item. So it's a
That's
lot.
Amazing.
It's a lot of work to get you some lettuce. You know, when there's technology available today that can allow local food production to be really healthy, and that technology is something that I've investigated quite heavily, and it's aquaponics. Aquaponics is a combination of aquaculture, which is fish farming, and hydroponics, which is growing vegetables, herbs, and fruits in a water medium. When you combine the aquaculture and the hydroponics together, it's called aquaponics because you have the fish that you mimic their environment, and they grow. You provide them food, and what they do is they actually poop and pee, and they actually take that poop and pee and run it through the beds of all the plants, and that's what becomes their nutrients. It comes back around clean to the fish tanks, and so at that point you have a closed loop system that only uses, you know, it basically reuses 95% of the water. The only water that's lost is through evaporation, transpiration out of the leaves. So you've got water conservation going on in there. It's inherently, there's no need for herbicides or pesticides, and you're able to grow protein.
Because why no need for herbicides and pesticides?
You're in a closed system. Usually,
but you have to have bees coming in.
A lot of these don't actually need pollination for the foliage to actually grow. When you have flowering fruits and other types of vegetables, yes, you will need that, and so that's more of a polyculture system. But say you just wanted to grow, you know, butter crunch lettuce and some other type of leafy greens, basil. No, you don't actually need the bees to actually. The bees come in.
So those could be closed systems,
yep.
But some systems would need to be open.
Absolutely, to get the pollen to actually make that that sexual part, that reproduction happen. Absolutely. So the bees are necessary, very necessary for many.
So what would you do for mitigation of pesticide? I mean, not to get away from that.
Well, the thing is, it's amazing is when you have a really healthy immune system in these plants, they don't actually get attacked by the fungicides or the funguses or the different type of.
Isn't one of the approaches to agriculture to do not monoculture, but to have like a variety?
Yeah.
And so the bugs, like if they're on one plant and there's a plant next door that they don't like, then they get out of there.
Yeah, and also there's beneficial insects that will eat those bugs. Like you know, you can put in ladybugs, and you can put in other types of bugs that will actually combat the spider mites and other type of aphids that actually will destroy and eat your crops. And so so there's definitely mixing of, you know, I've got this perfect system. It's like this 30-40 page system that incorporates the aquaculture systems, the fruit, the vegetables, the herbs, the bees, the worms, and even chickens and goats and other types of animals, all in this huge polyculture system, which is called the polydome. And what happens with this, every system, or every one part provides another needed part for the other. So for example, what do you feed the fish, right? You got to feed the fish something, because if you got to feed the fish poo, the poo goes into the plants, and the plant comes back with the clean water for the fish. So you can grow your own feed by making worms, by growing worms and having a worm farm. And maggots, as bad as that sounds, they grow easy as well, and they help decompose things. So Oregon actually has a really good program where they do this, and they have this amazing fertilizer that comes from all the waste that comes from the Oregon municipalities, and they collect in their trash bins, and the worms compost that down, and they grind the worms up, dry them, and feed them to the fish. And so
this is something that people could implement in any municipality locally to produce organic produce cheaply.
Yeah, very cheap.
And so it's you get rid of the 600-mile commute for the average food.
And if you incorporate vertical farming, it's another aspect where you grow really high in levels, and you have, say for example, the LED lights being powered by the Vortex coils. So inside, in a warehouse, you can turn that into a food production system.
So these coils that you're talking about, would they be able to power a fluorescent bulb?
Yes, they can power fluorescent bulbs as well.
Easy?
Yeah, we've got videos of that as well. So
and can you mimic like a sunrise sunset with these lighting systems?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. There's ways to mimic everything that nature does inside. And even with even with larger fish like salmon. Right now, a lot of the farm salmon takes place in pens that are right outside of the coasts of many different continents. And because they don't have the natural flow that normally salmon need, there's a lot of parasites and lice that can clamp onto that. And they inject a lot of antibiotics and all this type of stuff into the fish, and it's actually quite unhealthy. And so the whole salmon market, farm salmon, is actually switching to closed system recirculating aquaculture systems. And so salmon is another large shift that's taking place right now. And BC up in Canada is actually pioneering that particular technology, but it can be implemented anywhere. And they produce a lot of effluent or waste that can go into, again, providing nutrients.
Do you have a name for this process?
Recirculating aquaculture or aquaponics. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can Google that to your heart's delight, and you'll see a lot of information. We don't have that much information on native clean energy on that right now, but it will be coming. So, so that's the food. Then there's, of course, the water, which is something is very important. We've realized that your body actually structures and destructures the water every time your heart beats. You'll find next to the healthy DNA in your body, you'll have hexagonally shaped water. And so the more that we can actually mimic this hexagonal shape, the more we can actually get hydrated. And hydration is the key for all the processes in the body. And so what we've been able to work with the gentleman in Grants Pass who structures water, and he has a plant, he's been doing this for many years, and we've found a lot of good results. There's definitely more tests that I would like to do. I would love to have a lab take this water and do all the tests that they could on it, so we can see the viscosity of it, we can see the surface tension of it, we can see the oxygen level, we can see all these things. We haven't had the large budget to go through those processes. We would absolutely love to do that. But we do believe that structured water is a key part of any horticulture system or agriculture system or human, even for humans in our health system. We need to drink healthy water because the water that we drink makes us up. We're actually not 70% water like a lot of people believe. We're 99.9% water. And the scientific proof for that is involved in Dr. Gerald Pollack's work at the University of Washington. He's a 30-year professor there. And he's got a book called Cells, Gels, and the Engines of Life, which... Cells, Gels, and the Engines of Life? Yep. And that goes into that particular claim about why he believes that we're 99.9% water. And, you think, well, it's like there's skin and there's bone, but what happens if a bone that's been around for 1,000 years? It's like turns into dust. It's nothing. The water gives it structure. So the water is very important, and we've shown... right now we have a small market. We deliver about 205-gallon bottles of structured water in the Seattle area, and we've got very happy customers. We're looking at different distribution routes to provide a cheaper water. Doesn't we have to go down and drive to Grants Pass and truck it back up with a truck. So we're looking at building structuring water units for municipalities. So when we were talking earlier about these growing systems, there could be a growing system and a water system that could be working together. Absolutely. That's the ideal situation right there. They found in testing with just plain aquaculture, which is fish farming, that there's less disease. There's a higher growth rate of the salmon and the tilapia, and I believe that's probably because the water is better meant for their biological system, closer mimicking nature's water, which is, nature has a way where there's certain areas around the world that have quote-unquote healing water, and there's a reason for that. It's those areas have not been tainted yet by us, simply enough. So we think we talked about the food and the water and the energy, and the health is something that's also another aspect that we've studied quite a bit. I've got two partners in native clean energy, and they've been in the health field for the past 20 years, and so they have a high-end supplement company where they actually formulate their own supplements, their own. It's mostly around detoxing and immune boosting, and so they search the world for the best ingredients, combine those ingredients at the right consistency and potency levels, and they don't skimp. And then they really don't sell to the public too much, mostly sell to naturopaths and MDs directly, who provide them for their clients and prescribe this kind of supplements that are higher end. I came in and met them a few years ago and built healthyhumanperformance.com, which is where we're offering it to the retail for the public to actually buy some of these really high-end supplements that have shown to have quite a bit of a amazing scientific effect for detoxing the body from heavy metals, chelation type processes, as well as boosting the immune system through different various processes.
Let's talk for a minute about native clean energy. Give us a picture of your building, people who work with you, partners, franchises. Just kind of give us an idea of.
Yeah, so we have so Native Clean Energy basically consists of Roland Gregg, I'm the president, and Declan Owens and Paul Reynolds, and they're my partners. And we have an office in Seattle, Washington, and we have joint ventures with various different inventors and teaming agreements with them. And there's different terms we have in each of those for us providing funding and support in different various ways. And our intent is to take products to market that will benefit mankind and help developing communities, and even communities that are developed like Seattle or LA, do things a little more efficiently with all these different base processes. Because it's not just developing communities that need help, it's the cities that need help to change their processes right now. And so yeah, Native Clean Energy is, we're involved in, if it has to do with energy, food, water, healing, or shelter, and we're working with people in those fields who are, we believe, the most innovative at this moment. The shelter, we've actually working with Noah Israel, and he actually has this particular shelter building technology that's similar to 3D printing. 3D printing is where you actually can three-dimensionally print an object just with extrusion. Mm-hmm. And he's developed a similar thing, but on a larger scale, where he has a track that goes around in a circle. And in this track, basically, you have a little extrusion that extrudes out material that actually builds upon itself a dome. So this dome is something like a monolithic dome, which basically is, monolithic domes are, you blow up a form, spray on the concrete, deflate the form, and you've got a shelter. A really cheap way of doing a really sustainable shelter. And so this way, extrusion, there's zero waste in the building process, and you can print out any shape you want. So that's something that we're working on right now with Noah. It's very interesting, and I can later provide you some images and more information on that. It's really interesting shelter technology. So.
What about, do you have like a company philosophy? You're outside the box in some of the technologies you're talking about. What about the whole idea of the company philosophy and the traditional corporate mentality where money is what the object is instead of conscience?
Yeah, no, our objectives really, if we were about the money, we would definitely be on to just selling regular LED lights right now, or doing some other things that we know are very profitable, as we can take advantage of the shifting markets to that. But our philosophy is to find the fundamental baseline best solutions for energy, food, health, water, and shelter. And so that's really what we focus on. And we want to do that because we have families, and we've got kids and nieces and nephews that are going to inherit this earth, and we believe that we should leave it better than when we came here. And so our philosophy really mimics what the native philosophy is, with being in harmony with the surroundings, and you will have a beautiful life, and you will get rewards from that. There will be an ROI that's different than a bottom line or a rising stock price. We think that by doing this and following this path, we'll be able to provide solutions that will benefit all of us and have much higher ROI.
Thank you. It's been a great interview. Spell your name and your website again.
It's Rolland, R-O-L-L-A-N-D, Gregg, G-R-E-G-G, and it's nativecleanenergy.com.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Thanks, Sterling. To be in resonance with the actual coil and the amplification. So it's a resonant circuit, and there's a resonance there. When we hit a certain frequency, it zings, all the voltage comes out. It's like a bell rings, So those are some of the data points with the LEDs that we've gotten. So.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I know you're tired. It's been a long day. You've given a presentation and talked to Marco Roden. He's given a presentation.
It was great listening to Marco. Yeah.
And then you've had a lot of people asking you questions.
Yeah.
So I appreciate you hanging in there and And now you've got more chats going on yet. So
yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for talking about the lighting applications and what is the products that are closest to market with the Vortex coil. And so we've tested the Vortex coil in lighting and growing situations, and just the mere fact that we can light up LEDs, red lights and green lights, red and blue lights, the 440 and the 660 nanometer wavelengths, which are used for the vegetation and the flowering parts of growing vegetables, herbs, and fruits. We've seen that, well, we can light up the lights much cheaper than any other possible grow light on the market. In fact, I've used the most efficient LED grow light on the market from ProSource Worldwide, and that's the UFO illuminator. We used it for many years, and we're able to power that light up much cheaper than usually it takes. And I've got that video as well on the YouTube channel. Usually it takes about 177 watts to light up.
Hi, Sterling Allen here at TeslaTech 2013. It is July 27th, 2013, and we're going to be talking to Mr. Gregg, who just gave a presentation. We had an interview earlier, and I forgot to turn the camera on. I thought it was turning on, and I didn't. So we've got part two, and this is just redoing part one. We really appreciate him retaking this. So that's why it was light in part two and dark in part one. So here we go.
Hey Sterling.
Nolan is your first name, right?
Rolland.
Rolland.
Yeah, like the country Holland with an R.
Okay.
So I appreciate you doing this little interview. I think previously I just talked a little bit about how and why I got into this.
Yeah.
And so I'll just kind of go over that. Basically, my background is in corporate marketing. It's actually called search engine marketing, search engine optimization. This is in building websites, optimizing online websites, and I've done corporate marketing for General Motors and all this kind of stuff, national, brand, and direct. And so that's where I've been. But I wanted to really utilize my skills for a better good, because I knew that there's a lot of technologies out there that maybe weren't getting the attention they needed. And so I decided 5 years ago to go on a quest. And that quest is starting Native Clean Energy, which is a nonprofit. It also has a for-profit side, but most of it has been nonprofit because we're still putting money into it. So we had 576 LEDs, which took 28 watts to light up traditionally from a 12-volt battery. And that 12-volt battery with those 28 watts lighting the 576 LEDs basically lasted an hour and a half. And then we put the coil on it, and it lasted 58 hours. And it only took 1 watt. And so obviously it was using more watts to actually light it up, but it was only pulling out 1 watt from the battery. So that's a pretty amazing thing for off-grid lighting, developing countries, even us. I mean, if you were able to, go 2.5 days without recharging your battery, and it was providing your whole entire room light, that's a pretty significant. This is just a small little battery, that 7 amp hour battery, and so this is a very efficient in doing that. So there's a bunch of other videos that show lighting explanations in different ways that we've shown with amp meters, volt meters, and analog power meters going in, and then the same thing on the output, and then an oscilloscope showing the wavelengths so we can see the actual. There's the same number of actual peaks and same number of waves on the input and output, but the amplitude is much larger on the output wavelength. So people who are more technical can analyze those pictures and see the phase angles of the voltage and the amperage, so they can see it as real power. It is a resonant circuit, so the load does have an earlier stage of development. Daniel and Erica NUNEZ invented this by inspiration from many prior scholars before them, including Marco Rodin and Randy Powell, Victor Schauberger, and others along there. I met them about 1.5 years ago and was really impressed with what they had done to that stage, and I've helped them, as well as others, get to this stage. So Native Clean Energy has a joint venture with One Stop Energies to take this into applications for lighting, which is what we can, I may have explained briefly already, but lighting, healing applications, even increasing the growth of plants. And so there's all sorts of applications that this can go in, and we're closest with the lighting. That's the one where we've done the most work with. where we think that we have a better product than what's on the market right now for LED lighting. And so that's what we're looking to finalize and package up. We've got relationships with UL Labs in a specific UL certified lab in Nevada that's willing to go through the steps with us to getting it certified. So it's safe, and the claims are based on reality, and they're backed up and reproduced, and it's stamped with their stamp. And so we're going through that process right now. So that's, I think, probably about where we left off.
One of the things that you talked about in that first session that we did, you talked about some of the data that you had accumulated, the 2 tests that you had done. Do you want to repeat that?
Sure, yeah. There's the interesting test that was done to compare this, how a normal lighting system would function versus this. The slogan is and describes our mission and our reason for being, which is empowering communities with affordable and sustainable energy, food, water, healing, and shelter. So we actually have joint ventures or teaming agreements and have spent money developing different types of products and technologies in each of those fields: in food production, water purification, water production, water harvesting, energy production, energy harvesting, and healing products. And that's healthyhumanperformance.com. is all about the detoxing your immune and boosting your immune system and eating superfoods. And then shelters, building sustainable shelters and what that consists of. But this really what here is we've been focusing on lately, because it actually has applications in a few of those areas. Of course, energy is the easiest one to see. It's copper wire wound in a toroid. And this is the fundamental flow and shape of basically every material on Earth: air, water, molecules, atoms, electrons, electromagnetic energy. They flow in this particular shape. You'll notice that our Milky Way galaxy, if you take a picture of it looking at it, it looks like this. If you look at it from that angle, it looks like the inside of that, all coalescing into the middle. Our planets, they spin in this particular shape. And even the water vortexes, if you watch it, read Victor Schauberger's work. It's all about the vortex. And so we decided to, actually, I didn't invent this. I just came upon this